I'm Jenise Burnett.
I'm Sara Rogers.
And this is the Houston View.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Houston View. We want to take this opportunity to say that we are delighted to bring important news issues to the forefront and participate in the discussions, no matter how big or small. I'm joined with Jenise Burnett.
Hi. I too want to thank all of you for tuning in, past visitors and new visitors. I'm excited. I'm really happy about the topics that we have discussed in the past, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to discuss in the future.
Last time on the show, we talked about what families can do if their kids are being bullied, and we had Michael and Adrian Black on the show to help us better understand the challenges of bullying and what families can do. Let's listen to some of what the Blacks had to say.
They have to not be afraid to come to you and explain what is going on, and sometimes it has to be in detail.
I think that it's important that parents not take sides. I think it's important to be objective because when you are objective, then a lot of times what becomes obvious may not be seen. There might be something that's far more deeper than that.
One of the things that's important also is you really need to look deeply into your own child as to what's causing their self-esteem to be affected by what's being heard or what's happening.
Yes.
Now,
and then being of support in a way that allows for the outcome to be not only the one benefit from the one who maybe have been offended, but the person who is offending.
Right.
So in other words,
bullying is a very, very touchy subject. Parents must be diligent and really recognize and pay attention to the warning signs that their kids are giving off.
Definitely. In some cases, those warning signs will be the only indication that your child may be going through any changes.
Right. I mean, you hear about it all the time. Kids are bullied, and instead of telling someone or telling their parents, they try to resolve it on their own, which in most cases, the problem just escalates. So most children, they feel shame or they feel too embarrassed to really come forward and speak to anyone. So I guess the root of the issue, it never gets solved.
Right. And as the Blacks pointed out, a lot of times the issue's too big for families to handle.
Exactly.
So these kids really do need help. And we are going to come back to what can be done to assist kids in a bullying crisis. But for now, let's take a quick break. Lots of attention has been given to the issue of bullying. But all too often the discussions focus on bullying in schools. Whether it be physical, emotional, or cyberbullying, the concern is typically with school-aged children. But let's discuss a lesser-known problem, the issue of workplace bullying. We hear people complain all the time about coworkers, managers, supervisors, their bosses. The vast majority of these complaints may just be personality clashes. But when is a problem deeper than a simple workplace disagreement? When does it cross the line into bullying? Jenise, what are your feelings on this issue?
I mean, it makes sense. Disagreements in the workplace are very common, very, very common. But today there are so many ways that you can kind of air that. There's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, various other social medias. The only thing that surprises me is that I've personally never heard of workplace bullying. Right. Yes, I understand, like you said, different personalities clash, so there may be disagreements or different various run-ins, but I've never actually heard of bullying in the workplace. But it makes complete sense.
Yeah. So probably a lot of people feel the same way you do, but in fact, workplace bullying is quite common.
Oh, wow.
In some instances, you'll have an employee that likes to argue with several employees all the time, or you'll have groups of employees that target other groups. One of the most severe workplace bullying incidents occurred in Scotland around 2010. Deanne Fitzpatrick, a Canadian, worked for the Scottish government in the fisheries department. She alleges she was subjected to bullying in the form of sexism and racism, as well as violence towards other coworkers for nearly a decade before deciding enough was enough. She complained to the Scottish officials, informing them of the deplorable actions of some of her colleagues that they were engaging in. It is unclear what, if any, actions were taken to resolve the situation, but a photo has recently surfaced showing Deanne Fitzpatrick was held against her will, bound to a chair, and duct tape and with her mouth gagged shut. So Deanne alleges the same guys that she complained about were the guys that were responsible for the attack. And she said what they told her was, this is what happens when you rat on men.
2 fellow officers that I worked with discovered that I was the whistleblower. And one of them had a roll of tape in his hands, and he was flicking it about in his hands. And the other gentleman came to my left side, slightly back. And that's when he kind of bear hugged me while I was in the chair. And the other gentleman then, because I was kicking, and I did curse and tell them to leave me alone. And they taped my legs, and then he started to tape rest me. And because I was making noise, one of them told the other guy, give me some tape. I shuts her up. He took the tape and he placed it over my mouth. And then he said, that's what you get for speaking out about the boys. I was petrified.
Right.
Wow.
I
Okay.
know. So at least one of the men denies that the event ever took place at all, but he said, if it did happen, it was just an office prank. It should be noted that since the story broke, Deanne Fitzpatrick has been accused of being rude to clients and being an overzealous employee. So she's actually currently being investigated by the Scottish government.
I want to be able to work in an environment that's safe and friendly. I actually want everyone else that's been bullied and still being bullied, I want them to be able to do the same thing. I do not want anyone to be where I was not so long ago.
So it's really important that employees feel comfortable voicing their complaints with officials and know that they won't be attacked for exposing this type of bullying behavior. There isn't a great deal of discussion about workplace bullying. One couple recognized a need to advocate for victims of workplace bullying. So in 1997, doctors Gary and Ruth Namey founded a Workplace Bullying Institute. It is the only U.S. organization dedicated to the eradication of bullying in the workplace. It combines help for individuals through their website, consultations, coaching, research, books, DVDs, training, and legislative advocacy. So you can learn more about the work they do by visiting their website. It's workplacebullying.org. Let's hear what Dr. Gary Namey has to say about workplace bullying.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gary Namey, co-author of the book The Bully at Work. The first type, which we call the screaming Mimi, is a vein-bulging maniac who prefers a public setting. They're trying to control the emotional climate of the workplace. They want to instill fear in the heart of the target so that they will be paralyzed. Pure deer-in-the-headlights paralysis. Now, the most damaging family of tactics are implemented by the constant critic. And this type of bully is the one that's going to get you behind closed doors for plausible deniability. And by that, I mean it's always going to be turned into a she said situation. The targeted person, the victim, will never be believed, and whereas since the majority of bullies are managers, the manager will always be believed. And the third category that we chose for our book, Bully at Work, is the smarmy two-headed snake. Well, the two-headed snake, who happens to be smarmy and adopts passive-aggressive techniques and Jekyll and Hyde, backstabber, rumor mongerer, and when they're a supervisor, another technique they use is they fail to stop rumors. So that a person, what they're controlling, you see, with this, is a person's reputation. Now, those first three types of tactics are acts of commission, of doing things to people. So Ruth and I were kind of stuck coming up with the fourth category, and the catch-all is basically this huge family of tactics that are all involved with withholding resources. And we call that type of bully the gatekeeper. And this doesn't have to be a boss. As you know, not all bullies are bosses. And this is where that powerful and narcissistic and superior in her head administrative assistant, or his head, administrative assistant, lowly subordinate though they be in the org chart, this is the person who can actually grind everything to a halt, because every piece of information passes through their desk and they only let through that which they want to let through. And by looking at the screaming Mimi, The constant critic, the two-headed snake, and the gatekeeper, we pretty much think we've captured the full range of potential categories of misconduct and wrongdoing that people can foist on one another. It's not exclusive, exhaustive, and intensive, but it helps you organize the thinking and it avoids long lists. Thank you.
I think it's also important to note that workplace bullying takes place in many forms: men to women, women to men, men to men, women to women. In many situations, the bullying takes on a playful form or a playful nature. So in case they're ever caught, oh, I was just playing, they have something to fall back on. A prime example of this, actually, this happened in 2013, right here in Houston at Fred Fincher Motors. A former employee now, Bradley Jones, was actually a victim of workplace bullying. He was constantly tortured and teased by his co-workers, his managers, even the owner's husband. So after complaining, however, they didn't get fired, they didn't get written up. It was actually Bradley who got fired, even though at that time he was their top salesman. So let's take a look at Bradley's story.
Imagine this happening to you at work. You're at your desk when a colleague sneaks up and tasers you. It happens not just one time, it happens to him again. And again.
They would just laugh. You can't move. It's excruciating. The sound is horrendous. The whole ordeal. It's very painful.
Bradley Jones worked here at Fred Fincher Motors for more than 4 years. And he says over the course of just a few months, he was hit with this more than 24 times by his co-workers. Bradley is now suing his former boss, Sam Harless. Also named in the lawsuit, Harless's wife, Patricia, a Texas state representative who owns the dealership. Sam Namey is a workplace bullying expert and an expert witness for Bradley Jones. He says this is one of the worst cases he's seen.
This is sadistic workplace violence. This is a weapon designed for law enforcement originally, for crying out loud. It is designed to be the alternative to shooting someone.
In both cases, we see a classic response of punishing the victim. The harsh reality in most cases of workplace bullying, they go unreported because there is seldom anyone in the victim's corner, leaving the victim withdrawn from work and unable to trust pretty much nobody. The problem is becoming so widespread, however, that lawmakers are now passing the laws to help the victims fight back.
For the record, I'm Senator Annette Cleveland. I represent the 49th Legislative District, which encompasses City of Vancouver as well as parts of Clark County. And I'm here today to speak to this important bill that I've put forward. Workplace bullying is repeated, health-harming mistreatment of one or more persons by one or more perpetrators. So I see bullying as an assault on the psyche rather than on the physical body. And while we have strong laws in this state to prevent physical assaults or to address those, we don't have strong laws on the book to prevent psychological assault and deal with the psychological assault. And yet these attacks on the psyche can be just as debilitating and have even more long-lasting effects than a physical attack. So for this reason, I bring the bill forward. I hope to raise awareness of the harm done by bullying in the workplace, and I hope that our state can become a leader in better equipping employers to prevent bullying, and we'll pass this legislation. So I do commend the bill to you, and I want to say, Chair Kaiser, thank you for allowing this bill to be heard today.
Well, thank you. We were first introduced to Greg Barrett when he shocked the nation with allegations that the former superintendent of Katy ISD had been a big bully in middle and high school. Greg has agreed to sit down with us today to share what his life was growing up being bullied. Our hope is that families who are experiencing bullying will gain more insight into the issue and be better equipped to deal with this issue moving forward. So Greg, how are you feeling?
A little nervous.
Yeah, well, we certainly want to thank you for being here today and sharing your story with our viewers. It really means a lot. So people are familiar with the issues that you brought up regarding incidences of, you being bullied as a child.
Yes.
Can you tell us, before the March 19th board meeting earlier this year, had you ever shared your bullying experiences with anyone in particular as an adult?
Oh, sure. Plenty of friends, I had discussed this with ever since it happened, it was just something that happened, and I had kind of put it on the back burner. You move on with your life.
Right. How about, as a child, did you ever share your experiences when it was kind of happening when you were younger?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I had friends that were around me that saw it happening for sure. But no, even my parents did not realize how bad it really was. They had no idea.
What about, did you feel like you experienced any sort of behavior changes as a result of this? And what was your thought process going on during that towards your bully?
Well, of course. I mean, once something happens like this to you, your whole thought process changes. The way you treat people, everything changes for the rest of your life. I mean, that moves on to even the way you handle your children, what you teach your children, everything. It completely changes everything. Sure.
So do you feel like you were more angry or more scared as a result of this, just in your general demeanor?
No, I don't think I was angry or scared or anything. I was concerned when my children went through school because my real name is Greg Gay, and that is my legal name. Greg Barrett was only put forward for half a year of school that we had moved away after this happened.
Yeah.
And my parents went to the school and said, this is what's going on. He's having problems. Can we change their last name to my mother's maiden name, which was Barrett? And they said, sure, no problem. And my whole life changed overnight.
Wow.
Just that simple. That simple.
And do you recall any point in elementary school that a teacher stepped in?
I do remember one science teacher saying, I'm not going to have that in my classroom. And that pretty much nixed it for her classroom, but other teachers allowed it, and
Okay.
it caused problems.
So it was kind of going on during the classroom? Oh,
yes, absolutely. Well, my day started out with my first period teacher saying, "Gay Greg," when she called roll. And all the kids would laugh. And I mean, that's how it started.
Yeah, because she called roll like last name first, I see.
And my mother had sent a letter to her asking her to stop because it was causing problems. And she didn't stop.
So would you say then that the teachers knew that this was going on, or was there kind of some other things going on that they wouldn't have known about?
I don't think that there's any way they couldn't have known because it was happening during class, during PE, during sports, everything. I mean, I started to play football and the coaches were calling me, "Hey, gay boy," stuff like that, and I quit.
Did you ever tell a teacher or someone at the school and they just didn't do anything about it?
Well, of course, I went to the vice principal many times. Over a course of 3.5 years, I went many times for fighting and everything else, and they knew what was happening. They just never stopped it. And I'm not even sure they knew what to do.
So it was kind of getting physical, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Some punches thrown.
Absolutely. There were lots of fights during junior high, and a lot of it was them starting off calling me names or shoving me and calling me names, and I'd go to swing. I wasn't scared of even the biggest kid. It didn't matter.
So other than your science teacher saying something in class, was there ever a time when a teacher directly stepped in?
No. I can't remember any time than anybody ever stepped in, actually.
And did you feel like they should be doing more, or did you?
Yes, absolutely. You know, and that's what brought me to the big incident was, you know, after my head was shoved in the urinal and I had kids kicking me and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I went to the principal and he said, oh, you know, boys will be boys and they'll mature and they'll grow out of this. And I mean, that was the end for me. I mean, I was like, if that's not enough to do something, what's it going to take? You know, what's it going to take?
Right.
And I'd had it. I was at the end of the rope.
So I guess, what was your parents' initial reaction?
Well, they didn't know that I tried to commit suicide until that night at the board meeting. They did not
Really?
know. No.
Wow.
In fact, my wife did not know. I had really never shared that with anyone. I had always kept that inside. And it was, I remember I sent a text message to my mother and I said, I'm sorry you're going to hear this.
Yeah.
You know, because I didn't want them to feel guilty, you know.
So, I mean, it sounds like had been through a lot. What was it at that point, the moment you thought of committing suicide? What was it where you finally thought you couldn't go on anymore?
Well, it was after the urinal incident and the principal or the vice principal, his name, I don't know if I can say his name, but anyway, he was the vice principal and he told me, you know, boys will be boys, and I don't think those boys were punished
So
for
you
what
just
they
kind of
did.
felt like nothing was ever going to happen to
nothing
resolve
was ever
it.
going to happen. And then, you know, I don't know if something came over me and said everything's going to be okay. I had this like rush over my body, like you feel like you are embarrassed or something. And I just had this overwhelming feeling that everything was going to be okay. And then my father was transferred within a couple of weeks or something after that happened, maybe a month. And he was transferred, and just like that, my whole life changed. It was all gone, all water under the bridge.
So, did you ever have to get any sort of therapy to help
No.
with the? It
Not
was
at
just
all.
simply.
Yeah, I mean, once I moved and they changed my last name, my whole life changed. I mean, you have no idea. I had friends, I had girlfriends, I had, you know, everything. It all just completely changed.
Wow.
Well, I was back in sports and, you know, which I always wanted to do. And it's just, I don't know, I moved forward. Put it on, you know, file it away as, boy, I must have been bad in a previous life.
No.
And I was taking some punishment.
So what would you say to parents of a child who's experiencing bullying? What would be your advice?
Well, they need help. They need somebody in their corner, knowing that somebody's in their corner. Now, I don't want to say my parents were never in my corner. They were. Obviously, she wrote a letter.
Right.
You know, and they had called the school multiple times, but nothing was ever done. And they're basically powerless at that point, you know. So they were there, and they were support for me. And I mean, they changed my name, and that was it. You know, that was a life changer right there.
Yeah.
But parents that are going through this, they need to be there for their kids. They need to tell them, look, you know, this will get better as you get older, people mature, and you can survive this.
So then would you say that maybe it's helpful for parents to look at because in your case there was something specific that was causing the bullying, just the immaturity of your
Right,
your
my
last
name being gay, so.
So maybe they can kind of, you know, if there is a specific cause, they can do something to address it. It seemed like it worked in your case a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it worked real well in my case, but every case is different.
Yeah.
You know, everything is
true.
different. There's kids that have autism that can't help the way they're acting, and they're being bullied. And, you know, I'm not sure what the answer is there. They need help.
Very situational, yeah.
Sure.
And then do you have any advice? What would you say to the child that's actually going through it?
Just hang in there. Absolutely hang in there. Do not give up. Do not give up.
Well, Greg, I'm so sorry you went through all of that, but anyone else who is experiencing bullying or is experiencing it right now, like Greg saying, hang in there, and there is a brighter future.
Sure.
And
there's lots of groups out there now that you can talk to and open up. You know, that
Absolutely,
wasn't there when I was a kid.
It's more, yeah, I feel like the issue is really being put under the spotlight
Yes,
more
I mean,
so
I'm
than it was
on
before.
probably 5 or 6 different groups on Facebook, you know, alone, just talking with people, you know, letting them let that out, because holding it in is part of the problem. You've got to let it out.
Yeah, and I think you're a good example of the fact that there is a brighter future. So I guess we'd like to talk a little bit about the man you are today. You know, are you married? Any kids?
I'm married, 2 children, and been married almost 25 years. Pretty good marriage. I have a good business, and I love what I do, you know.
And what type of work are you in?
I own a hot shot company. So basically deliveries.
Oh, cool.
And we go all over the state and out of state sometimes. It just depends.
Wonderful. And how can people contact you?
I have a website at arrowhotshottx.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing with us. And I think it's safe to say there is life after bullying. So if you want to reach out to Greg, feel free to contact him.
Absolutely. You can contact me on Facebook through Greg Barrett, because I kept Greg Barrett because all my high school friends, you know, a lot of them knew because they were there in junior high, but a lot didn't. A lot had no idea, no clue that my last name was gay. And it's funny, friends will see my parents and they'll say, "Hey, Mr. Barrett," but that's not really his name, you know? So.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you again for sharing with us. And I think it's safe to say that there is life after bullying. If you want to reach out to Greg, feel free to use any of his social handles. And remember, get help. It's never too late. I'm Sara Rogers. Thank you for tuning in to the Houston View. Until next time.